Welcome to The InEVitable, a podcast by MotorTrend.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast, our vodcast about the future of the car, the future of mobility. And this is an episode I want to do for a long time because it's about the present and future of the grid. That's right, the power grid. But before we get to it, Ed Lowe here, he's got a special message just for you.
The InEVitable vodcast is brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Aria, inspired by the future, designed for the now. And before we get to our guest, I do have a question for you, Johnny, which is, how was that meat smoothie you had the other day? Okay,
it was actually the most delicious thing.
Here's the setup.
Yeah.
So last Friday,
yeah,
Chevy did this ridiculous thing to launch the Equinox EV.
Mm-hmm.
They paired up with the most expensive luxury celebrity grocery store.
Also like they've never met a fitness fad or not a health fad, bogus scientific claim that they've never fully embraced and made gluten free.
Chevy joined up with Erewhon, which is this ridiculous grocery store.
$19 smoothies. The base price of a smoothie. A smoothie is $19, and that's before you add powdered sea moss gel. And you can
hang on. You're getting way ahead.
You can do $40 smoothies.
Yes. Erewhon is famous for like a little container, like a 6-ounce container of strawberries costing like $35.
Yeah.
But to Johnny's point, they also have like packaged foods in there. Smoothies. Chevy and Erewhon joined up for one day only and did a smoothie called Equinox EV Electric Juice.
Electric Juice.
A limited edition, wellness-inspired beverage inspired by the Equinox EV.
Yep.
It had, I don't know, what did it have in it?
Blue spirulina.
Yes. Oh, Choco. The planet's most protein-rich plant source, and blue spirulina, the electric blue superfood that matches the Equinox EV signature color.
And I'm the schmuck who went down there and
drove
the Equinox EV and then drank it.
So we had this hilarious conversation on our company Slack about, oh, somebody's got to go try this thing. And then somebody looked up the rest of the menu at Erewhon, and there was Dr. Paul's raw animal-based smoothie.
Yeah, raw animal smoothie.
$19.
Yep.
Consists of raw kefir milk,
mm-hmm.
beef organs, mm-hmm. immuno milk, blueberries, honey, banana, sea salt, and maple.
But before we get to that one, I had a Hailey Bieber's strawberry glaze.
How many smoothies did you have?
I bought 3. Well, I got the electric juice for free.
What was the interest rate on the loan you took out to buy these smoothies?
I bought the Hailey Bieber and I bought the raw animal. Hailey Bieber, sugar bomb, kind of gross, filled with all kinds of nonsense. If you look that one up, it's the most nonsensical smoothie of all time.
Organic unicorn farts.
Dude, yeah, exactly. But the raw animal with the beef organs, like literally delicious. Like it was.
Okay, so what did it taste like?
It tasted like creamy blueberries and bananas with honey. And then it had this like unctuous, like, when you eat a lot of oysters and you're kind of like, or like a really good piece of meat. Like it was like that feeling.
But not the flavor.
It tasted like blueberries, bananas, and honey. It was absolutely delicious. I've lived in LA for 23 consecutive years. I've lived here most of my life. That was my second time ever going to an Erewhon. If I ever go back to an Erewhon, which is very doubtful, but I will be going back for that smoothie and that smoothie only.
Did you see any beautiful people at this Erewhon?
Yeah, I did see some, but even the best part was this guy next to me in line. He's like, "Are you in film?" And I go, "No." He goes, "I'm in film. I'm a writer, director, producer. I have this new movie out. I put it on YouTube because I figured nobody wants to pay for streaming services, so you just watch it for free, blah, blah, blah." And he tells me the name of it, but as he's telling me the name, he's like, "I spelled I'm not going to say what it is, but I spelled the big word wrong on purpose because, everyone else will be looking for the right way it's spelled. Mine's spelled wrong." And I was like, genius. And then I went and I was trying to Google it. Couldn't find it because I couldn't remember how to misspell the word.
It's perfect.
So, yeah. It was such an LA moment.
So the raw animal smoothie for $19.
It was delicious.
But just so we're clear, it's not raw meat, right? Did they cook the liver?
I have no idea. I don't know what it is. It's organs. I mean, I assume it's cooked. I don't know. It was delicious. Whatever it was. I'm still here. This is 4 days ago.
Okay.
The electric juice, though, tasted like, how David Chang sells cereal milk?
Yeah.
At Momofuku? It was like cereal milk, but like blue cereal milk.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be Chevy, their launch color for the Equinox EV is Riptide Blue, which is like a nice blue. This was
Almost
much
like your
lighter.
hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, no. Riptide Blue is darker than this. The energy juice was this color.
Okay.
And it was fine, but I drank too much of it, and I was too full to finish that delicious raw animal smoothie that I wanted.
That's
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So good, yeah.
So raw animal smoothie,
It's awesome.
Great. Even better, our
yeah.
guest this week.
Oh yeah.
Who
He's much
is
better.
Cody Smith.
I don't know. Raw animal smoothie was really. Anyways, go ahead.
Cody Smith. He is from California Independent Systems Operator. He is a grid ops manager. The dude it's great. It's an organic guest. I reached out to CAISO, California ISO.
Because I told Ed too.
Well, that's debatable. Because we've wanted to talk to somebody about this
dang grid.
age-old question.
The dang grid.
Hey man, you guys keep pushing these EVs, but grid can't handle it. We reached out. We got connected to Cody, and the dude is awesome. He knows a lot about it. He spent his entire career working in various grids throughout the country, so he can speak with authority on not just how California's doing, but how the Midwest, and oddly enough, he would like to buy a beer for all the grid operators in Texas.
Yeah.
Despite all their challenges down there, which we get into.
So again, we debunk 2 really big myths on this episode of The InEVitable. Can the grid handle it? Probably the answer is yes. And coal-powered cars. You get this a lot from people. If he's like, yeah, I have an EV. They're like, oh, you drive a coal-powered car. So
Not necessarily.
let's get into it.
Let's talk to Cody. All right. So Cody Smith from California Independent System Operator. Let's just start there. What is ISO or CAISO or however you say CAISO, right? I guess
We usually just call it CAISO.
Okay.
Yeah,
CAISO.
everything gets shorthanded.
Okay. So what's CAISO?
California's version of an independent system operator, which is an industry term of these groups that get together for a coordinated power market between different companies. And this one was kind of forced upon California with deregulation.
In 1998, right?
Yep. Precursor to energy crisis. Didn't go perfectly right away, but we're doing much better at it now.
What was the problem back then? Why did they need to deregulate what was essentially a private industry?
Anything else like that with airlines, whatever, if there's not competition, everybody gets, I think, 9.8% back on anything you spend. So you're really incentivized to spend as much as you can to get more back. And there's so many advantages of trading and regionalization. When you just look at California and Arizona, Nevada, and we have all the solar, we just have more sun. So we want to connect. We want to be in a market with others because we don't always have sun. But if we can trade our sun for maybe some of your hydroelectric, your wind coming back, everybody's better off.
Okay.
But couldn't you, like, I want to ask the larger question, like, are we better off after deregulation? But like, if it was all regulated, couldn't the, central planners say, all right, Arizona, you're sending solar power to Wyoming, you're sending coal power back to Arizona in the winter? Like that's not efficient?
I suppose you could. No, it's not efficient.
Okay.
Bilateral schedules. It's not solving in real time, which our markets solve every 5 minutes now.
Okay.
Of what is the best dispatch solution right now that takes into account not only the market, but constraints. Transmission lines can only flow so much.
Right.
So let's run them right up to their limit is what's the cheapest energy to travel. And then we'll start redispatching around that with more expensive units. So you get an optimized solution every 5 minutes.
And that wasn't possible with a regulated power grid.
No, they were selling maybe day ahead at best.
Okay.
There was
in large block transactions.
And how much of a efficiency improvement is it to do it every 5 minutes versus 24 hours ahead?
A
guesstimate.
I wish I knew the exact number, but I believe we've saved just our Western energy imbalance market, where people are only kind of dipping their toes into this idea of a large Western coordinated market. But the savings, I believe, are around $6 billion
for
the last 6 years.
Okay. That's some money. Yeah.
And it started with just California ISO and Pacific Core being in Utah and Oregon, Wyoming, that area. So as it's grown to more companies, that savings number keeps ratcheting up faster and faster and faster. LA's in there now. We have, I think, 70% of the load in the West.
Okay.
So the benefits are stacking up much
So
quicker.
we're already, I think, 3 stories above most people's heads. ISO, Independent System Operator, you've essentially, this is a marketplace for energy to be more like efficiently traded? And I think your question is where's the efficiency? Like how come regulation can do it? This is a market. This is one of these capitalist terms, right? Like if everybody is, there's more incentive to
Save money
by trading instead of operating in sort of a
central planning.
right in a monopoly,
top
in a top-down kind of way. Is that accurate?
Yeah, because markets do really work if they're a benevolent market. And we work really hard to have the transparency, stakeholder input. We are a not-for-profit public benefit corporation.
Right.
So we don't make money off of more transactions or electricity being more expensive, anything like that. So especially when you get to the idea of how's the grid doing? Should we have more EVs? My stake is just keeping the grid running.
Right. So who are your customers? So who are your customers?
Our customers are the utility organizations or anybody who's building a new project and interconnecting to the grid. They're connecting within California through California ISO.
So PG&E would be
a customer.
Yeah.
Con Edison, LADWP, SoCal Edison, all those guys these are your customers of CAISO.
California ISO.
Yes.
And then when we look at that imbalance market, we're going out to BPA in Washington, Northwest Montana, out of Billings, New Mexico. We have a huge footprint there.
Okay.
And so does our reliability coordinator service,
Okay.
which is just managing the reliability, make sure everybody gets along, and we cover an even larger area. But it's all the Western interconnection.
That's the RC West in your title.
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay,
mean,
so
Regional reliability
coordinator is another federal term that
Right.
every asset needs to be in a reliability coordinator area.
Okay.
Because our job is to make sure that the individual assets get along.
And then you were saying before we started recording, there's the Western, there's the Eastern, and there's Texas.
Yeah.
And Texas is its own special grid.
Texas won't tie to anyone else because as soon as you do, you're interstate and you can be more regulated by the federal government.
Right. God
So,
forbid. Yeah.
There's reasoning behind why they don't want to do that. I don't want to throw them under a bus, but there's so much benefit of that regionalization and tying over a broader area that they're not realizing. And they've seen
Like when it gets really cold and your citizens start dying because you're not tied into the rest of the grid.
in 2021.
Yeah.
And it gets compounded because that area produces so much of our natural gas
Right.
and pumps it across the country. So if they start losing power to end use customers and those end use customers are producing natural gas, now you don't have the gas for your gas turbines.
Right.
And that's where it really became catastrophic there.
Right.
So what do you do? Those are big groups. I kind of get the customers that CAISO has, but what is your job actually? Do you have a title beyond RC West? Are you like are you a director? Are you VP? Are you like
no, you didn't get anybody that good. You got further down the totem
Down
pole.
the trough.
They just
Yeah.
picked somebody. No, I jumped on this opportunity, so that's why you got me. But I'm a grid operations manager.
Okay.
And there are 4 of us, and our role is really processes, procedures, a little bit of managing the actual operators. I was an operator for 14 years, a reliability coordinator for about 8.
Okay.
So sitting on the desk, it's a 24/7 job of watching, are things overloading? Do we have enough capacity on the grid in real time and reacting?
What are you watching? Is it like a mission control? Are there like a bunch of screens?
Oh, it looks like NASA. I
really?
can show you some pictures that are
no kidding.
Googleable
Yeah.
of what it looks like.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
the huge curved screen and then little horseshoe consoles everywhere.
TireRack.com is your place for the best selection of tires from top brands. Always fast and free shipping and multiple convenient installation options. They also stay on the cutting edge of the tire industry. Their world-class tire testing program is Truth Serum for tires. EV-focused tires, products with noise-canceling technology, they've tested it all to help you make the best decision before buying. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
Now, let me ask you this though, with deregulation, like, back when, I can't remember, are we currently signed on to the Paris Accords or not? But when we were signed on to the Paris Accords, like, you kind of want to like stop with the coal, up with the renewables. Do you guys care at all, or it doesn't matter? You just monitor everything.
So we do care. Part of California ISO's mission statement is that we want to build the greenest, most cost-effective, most reliable power system,
Right.
and all three of those together. So the environmental part is part of that statement. And it used to be sort of the triple constraint, like time, scope, and quality, where they were all fighting with each other. Now it seems the cheapest and most often reliable resources we have are the green resources. That's why we're building so many.
Right. Because the cost of solar and wind is just going down and down
Straight
and down.
Yeah.
Right.
And storage, which obviously vehicles had a big impact on. We didn't have really good batteries, cheap batteries, until we had electric vehicles.
Right.
Okay.
And then they've applied that to the grid, and we have storage where we've never had storage before.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me just provide a little more context here, because you're in such an interesting position, but it's so far out of the scope of what I think our audience normally has their heads wrapped around. You've been pretty modest so far. California as a grid is, at least what I Googled, pretty awesome. First of all, CAISO is handles 80% of the electricity for the entire state of California. Is that accurate? 70-80%?
That's about right. And then if you include our imbalance market, it's everyone. We have Imperial Irrigation District as part of that. They aren't part of California ISO as it's traditionally known, but they're in the market. LADWP is now in the imbalance market. They're not part of California ISO.
Because they're still public. They're still a
yeah,
public
so
utility.
they couldn't be forced in by Governor Brown back then to make them join.
Right, but they're very reliable. Anyways, go ahead.
And then so huge market, biggest market. I mean, California is the largest state by
Just in terms of population
and by cash. Like, we're the 6th largest economy in the country, in the world, 5th or 6th, I don't know.
4th or 5th, actually.
And then we lead the country in terms of renewable energy, right? I just checked the specs this morning. Most of it's natural gas, but second would be solar. It's like 16 or 17%, and then hydro and geothermal, I think,
and wind.
Wind and hydro around 10%.
Yeah, and it's growing all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the renewables, we've had last
coal,
I looked
2.2%. Coal, small, very little coal.
and we can explain that too.
Okay.
Colorado,
Utah,
close.
yeah.
Okay.
So just as far as we're progressing,
right?
We've had, I believe it's 111 days so far this year. It's end of September.
Yeah,
first day of
October, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
I believe
tomorrow.
so. 111 days where we've had at least 1 hour where we're producing more renewable energy than the whole grid is using in load.
Right.
So we're over 100% renewable.
Great. Anything
Anything else we're producing, we're exporting somewhere else. Again, benefit of coordinated markets being able to do that, because you couldn't do it as an island.
Right. It'd be like a situation that Germany has where they're producing so much green energy, it just goes away. They just can't
they just shut it off.
They're pissing away like 5.6
They need more batteries.
billion megawatts or something. It's a
That's
crazy
been the
number.
key to unlock it. And we've built so many batteries this year.
Explain this. So how do EVs help?
Well, here's no. But the context for this is, how we got connected is there was an article in LA in the local LAist.com had a radio article that said, hey, so far the last 2 summers, LA has not had a flex alert or a brownout.
Yeah, I sent that article to you. Yeah.
No, I sent it to you.
No, I sent it to you.
No, the history looks like I sent it to you. Anyways, and so we got to
I
get a
didn't
guy.
get it. Yeah.
We got to get a guy on from CAISO, because of this thing I actually heard on the radio, dude. So
I sent it to you, but
okay.
Whatever.
Anyways,
yeah.
And then I reached out to CAISO, and they're like, "Sorry, we don't have anybody for you."
Yeah, I remember that reaction.
Go talk to people. Go talk to like your local utility. And I was like,
Cal
"This is
Energy
crazy."
Commission, because they
Cal
do
Energy
those.
Commission.
They do those studies, so
Right.
I can't tell you we can handle exactly this many EVs or this is how many we're
Right.
projecting to connect to the
That wasn't
grid.
my question. My question to the CAISO person was, I want to hear about these storage batteries, because that was what was referenced in the article as being the thing that's different from the previous 8 or 10 years when we were having flex alerts and brownouts. So that's a context for. And then the great thing is you DM'd me on Instagram saying, I'd love to come onto the podcast, talk about it. I work for CAISO. I was like, this is great.
All right, Ed, let him talk.
I saw the email come through, and I jumped on it saying,
Okay.
there is more to the story.
Right.
We can talk about what we can talk about.
How have EVs helped the California ISO or the grid in California?
EVs have helped the grid by developing the battery technology and making the battery technology much cheaper that we actually do get to build it and put it on the grid.
And what do you guys do, or what do energy companies do with these batteries?
So we produce so much solar, other renewables, middle of the day, that we can be 100% renewable plus, and we used to just turn it off. It was just wasted.
Right.
And now we store it, so when the sun goes down, we still have power for another 4 hours. And that's really the peak. The peak energy happens a couple hours after the sun sets.
Because everyone gets home, the house is hot, clothes are dirty, the dishes are dirty, gotta cook, watch TV, all that stuff.
So we used to have this incredible climb where the sun set and all of our power went away and load was going up at the same time.
Right.
So we're firing up all these small natural gas units, whatever we have available, to try to make this peak demand. And now the batteries are just doing it based on market value, price, and responding. They charge when it's cheap, they discharge when it's expensive, and leveling off everything. So just in round numbers, California ISO's load is about 50,000 megawatts at peak, worst day in the summer. And we currently have, I think we're nearing 12,000 megawatts of installed battery capacity.
Wow.
So
And
over 20%.
What's the goal for installed battery capacity?
I don't know.
Okay, you just keep building it.
And it might be a shifting goal.
Right.
Because EVs, but more than EVs is AI and data centers and these
We'll
other
talk about
major
that. We'll
loads.
get to that.
So real quick, so we MotorTrend Group owns Hot Rod, and so I'm
aware.
friends with all these guys, but I remember famously, I think it was 2021 was our last, like, it wasn't even a brownout, but they just said, like, this alert went out that said, hey, California residents, Southern California residents, flex alert, if you could not wash your clothes, run your dishwasher, run your AC, or charge your cars between, I want to say it was like 4 and 11 or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds
4 and
right.
9. That would help.
Mhm.
And the anti-electric vehicle people were like, see,
all of Orange County went nuts.
They ignored the washing machine, they ignored the air conditioner, they
Right.
ignored they just was like, see, you can't even charge electric cars. And it was like, no, first of all, people that own electric cars, you charge at night anyways because it's cheaper.
Right.
But so, and they were up in arms, like the memes and the this and the see. And then, as Ed just pointed out, like the last 2 years, none of that has happened during the summer. And you're saying this is directly because of the battery infrastructure you're able to build because EVs have unlocked cheap lithium-ion storage.
Batteries are the biggest portion.
Okay.
Because we've built so many and we had very little storage in the past. The other is just building more renewables. We've also built some gas plants, excellent program to keep a few old gas plants that were going to get shut down on just for emergency purposes.
Sure.
And that was a state government plan. And usually you don't think so highly of those. And this one turned out great. It was a great idea because they existed. Let's just keep them if we need them a day or two.
Right.
And that's been helping too. A lot of coordination with state government on, say, disconnecting ships that were docked in harbor and taking shore power. There were so many other things we hadn't really gotten into because we didn't feel we needed to until it crept up on us. By the way, I was the operator. The reliability coordinator is the highest responsibility and authority for maintaining the reliability of the electric power grid.
Okay.
And we have most of the West.
Okay.
And I was the lead RC on shift August 14th and 15th of 2020. The one time in 10 years we had to curtail. It was about 4% of California. The worst days we've had in 10 years was reducing 4% of California's load. Unfortunately, my house got shut off.
Right.
You make the order, and then your wife texts you.
Yeah.
Why don't we have power?
Don't come home tonight.
Sorry. Sorry, that was me.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
So-
and again,
Go find
that
a
gets
hotel with power.
blasted to be
Right.
this massive failure,
Right.
where the other question is, how much do you want us to build?
Right.
If it's an extreme hot weather event that we haven't seen anything like it in the past, for the whole West to be this hot that we can't trade with our partners, everybody needs their own energy. Plus, you have a lot of these power plants are built in the 70s or 80s, and they've been running full out nonstop for several days. Some of them shut down.
Yeah.
Some of them have issues, and we lose them. So we're in a really extreme condition, and we lose 4% of California's power for a couple hours. I think it was 2 hours each day.
You're the expert, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I'm trying to forget about it.
Let's say
This is great.
3 hours.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know you were the guy, and it turns out you're the guy
you're the
responsible
guy.
for this.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can literally, if you're mad about that, and you still got something, your goldfish died because the tank got too hot. Here's the guy.
For 2
okay?
hours. Yeah.
I was. That's one of those career moments, really,
Yeah.
because that doesn't happen often.
Okay.
Right.
But our goal is to make sure the whole power grid doesn't fail.
Right.
And we do that sometimes by we have to remove customer load as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's like, but that's the last step. right?
that's the last thing. And actually, in that case, the rules were at the time that you had to maintain an amount of running operating reserve.
Right.
So that if you did lose something, you could just bring that power up.
It was like 4% or 3%, I think.
It's complicated. We won't, but you're in the range.
I think
Yeah,
I saw an
okay.
article. All right.
3% of integrated hourly load plus generation.
Oh God, you've lost me.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
So now they say you could use load as a reserve. 100%. So if you lose a resource, you can balance by just dropping the load after you lose the resource. You don't need the generation available.
Okay.
So if we had the same rules we have today, then we wouldn't have had to shed the load. So we were on the margins.
You had enough.
And let me ask you this: now with the extra, the
Storage
12% or the 12,000 megawatts of storage capacity, would that have even happened?
No.
Okay.
No, that's
That's why.
such a
Yeah.
huge. We don't build 20% new power grid
Right.
So
in the past. It's been a really exciting change because they're so flexible too. They're fast.
All right. So the big question.
well, I'm super
Yeah.
dumb. Where are
Yes.
these? Where do you get the batteries?
Mhm.
And where are they?
I don't.
Okay. Great. Great
I
answer.
don't know that much about where they're sourcing. I know a lot of them do use similar technology to EVs.
Right.
Even Tesla's building these huge battery storage facilities.
Sure.
But people ask to get connected to the grid. We handle interconnection queue, we call it,
Okay.
of getting you connected. And then they're building it, they're operating it, they're bidding in their resource with
okay.
prices, and we just dispatch them based on their bids.
And so you look at a battery the way you would look at like a power plant. It's just another thing on the grid that connects to everything else that energy can go to or come away from.
Yes, and normally it's always been energy going away from.
Yeah.
So it has been a little bit of a new paradigm with they're taking huge amounts of energy. So we need to plan for that too.
Right. But do you need like can the same cabling handle
Mhm.
it? It's not a problem. You don't need like a separate return line or anything or
No, it goes both
yeah.
just fine. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's what's in it for these guys who are building these megawatt storage batteries is that they're playing the market too, right? They're gonna buy or receive the power
When it's cheap.
and
sell it
then
when
it's-
send it back when it's 3 cents higher.
Yeah, it's market arbitrage.
yeah.
Power
buy,
can
buy
be
low, sell high.
So this is like building a bank, basically.
And this is the spikes
like
have
a
gone
giant-
down dramatically with
Right.
batteries. We used to have
Okay.
really steep price spikes in the late afternoon, and gas prices would go way up too. So we've leveled those off, which is
Mm-hmm.
really nice. But also we've leveled off where we used to we would pay other states to take our solar power.
Right.
We will pay you $2 a megawatt. Please just take it.
Wow, really? So we're generating it and then
Paying people to take it
paying people, not even giving it away.
because they
Yeah.
want the credits. They
Right.
want the energy credit that they produced a renewable.
Right.
So they would rather pay you to take that energy than to
Right.
shut it off.
Okay. Yeah.
And now if we can store it, yeah, we're not paying to take
You're not paying Utah.
as often,
Yeah.
but the price is still pretty low. But there's also been, I believe it's a state rule that if you're going to build a new solar facility or wind facility, you also have to co-locate batteries. Because we have so
Smart.
much
Yeah.
solar, we don't need it unless it has a storage component.
Right. Right.
Huh.
And that you also hear a lot of people that are for whatever reason anti-renewable, like sun doesn't shine at night. It's like, yeah, but batteries. You put the energy into a battery and then you can use it at night.
And that was such a problem.
Yeah.
And when I was in school, I have a master's degree in energy business. And some people, well, you're just, college educated. Of course you feel this way. I went to Tulsa. If you can find a more conservative university in the United States on energy, I'd be surprised.
I've been to Tulsa. Tulsa's like 92% is works for the oil company there.
It was an oil and gas
what's
education.
the company? It's
Conoco?
Conoco. I think 92% of the town is employed by Conoco.
There was Conoco. I think even Texaco, I remember being big. Natural gas is huge there now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was not a Berkeley
right,
energy education.
Did you have an engineering degree before that, or is this?
No, I was going to school, wanting to work for car companies, mechanical engineering, loved cars. Grew up drag racing since I was 16 with my dad and a buddy of mine, Fox Body 5-speed.
Oh man,
$450.
Yeah,
back then because it'd been hit in the rear, but it still drove straight.
Hey man,
but I was in college in 2008.
Yeah,
and they were all bankrupt and being owned by the government.
Weren't hiring. Yeah,
not hiring.
Right.
And when you have college debt, huge concern. So I looked over, and Bismarck, North Dakota, where I grew up, has a program called Electrical Transmission System Technology. As an associate's degree, it's 18 months, and the average was, at the time, I think, $70,000.
Mm-hmm. Because you're running grids and
Power
stuff.
grids.
Yeah.
And looking at that, like, it's cheap, it's affordable, it's fast, and I can go get a job, and it worked out. And and at the time, utilities were boring. And I was just doing this as I can make money to do the things I want to do when I'm not at work. And now utilities are actually super interesting.
Looking for the best off-road trails? OnX Off-Road has you covered. With over 750,000 miles of trails and comprehensive offline maps, you can explore without worrying about cell service. Easily find trails for 4x4s, ATVs, dirt bikes, and more. Our app provides detailed trail info, including difficulty ratings and open/closed dates. OnX Off-Road also helps you navigate public and private land boundaries, ensuring you stay legal. Try OnX Off-Road free for 7 days and discover why it's the go-to app for off-roaders. Download now. So what's your normal day like?
My normal day is working with other companies on if we have issues.
But you go into an office.
I go into an office. California ISO has a really nice office in Folsom
you
that they built.
Show up like 9 o'clock, got a Starbucks in your hand.
Usually, yeah.
Okay. And you walk into freaking, it's like DEFCON 5, like it's like the NORAD for energy distribution.
Bit. I have a cubicle now outside of the control room, but I'm still right next to it. Okay. And usually go in.
So you can run in and save the day if need be.
Right.
Or talk to the operators about what issues and communicating that out. Our big goal, especially in my role, is to make sure there's not 50 people coming in asking the operators what's going on. Are we going to be okay? Do we need to...
And they would come in on like the hottest day of the year and the coldest day of the year, something like that? Or like when people reading the weather, like, so I'm sure you guys like look at the weather report like crazy, right?
Oh, yes. And we have our own meteorologists to forecast not only the weather, but are we going to have cloud cover, what time of day?
I was playing with your app. They have a very cool app that and I both downloaded, but I was like...
Who sent it to you?
ISO Today would be...
Oh my God.
Yeah. ISO Today.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Ed. And full credit for sending me the app. But like, you know, we have this heat wave coming up. Like it's going to be over 100 degrees in October. And I was like, do they have a calendar? They do have a calendar, and it's predicting what tomorrow's power consumption will be, which I thought was
currently
pretty cool.
Right now, current demand is 28,920 megawatts and 72% renewable serving demand. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Well, you can only look at it really by scale. So if our peak is right above 50,000 and we're at 20,000, we're about half peak, which is normal. We have this
for this time of day.
This is
for
crazy.
This time of day. The sun.
Yeah. It shows the solar load from 6 a.m. nothing to now it's like peaked because the sun came up.
Yeah.
And it's dramatic. And at the same
every
time,
day,
all these buildings have solar panels on them. My house has solar panels.
Same here.
So people are using less energy at the same time.
Right.
So you used to have the opposite issue in the morning that you had in the evening. Suddenly load drops down, generation ramps up, and you're trying to just pull it back down. You got to the only thing you can control there is the generation. We can't control what you're doing at your house yet. So we're pulling down that solar generation. And now it's just the batteries.
I like how you stuck yet in there. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of opportunities. For that.
Well, I have like a Nest thermostat, and it makes decisions. You know, it decides based on what I told it to decide, but it sets its own temperatures a lot of the time. So I'm like, why is it so hot? Oh yeah,
and we can see it too. If you watch that too, if you come around, especially a really hot day, you'll see it at 4, 5, and 6, where suddenly there's this big drop off in power demand. Because people's Nest thermostats or EVs, mine's set to shut off at 3 p.m. I have a Rivian too, so we can
peak
outs
truck or SUV.
I have the T. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my man.
Green.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
The white interior, I love it.
Yeah.
I bought the same wheels
They're
as
the
you,
best.
but in bronze.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had to buy
black
them.
rhinos.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm guessing they sent them to you, but I had to go.
They
up there
did send them to me. I got the
purchase them.
prototype set. I only have 4 though, not 5. All right, now hang on. Let's switch it to EVs. All right, so real famously, Governor Newsom, boo hiss, as a lot of people that are not watching this say, 2035, no more gasoline cars can be sold in California. 12 other states have latched on to that, legislation or, whatever. They've made the same commitment. People that hate EVs or whatever, doubt EVs, they say grid can't handle it. 2035, can the grid handle it?
Can the grid handle it? And I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
If you post anything about EVs online, the first comment is the grid can't handle EVs.
Right.
And I go in there and I fight people on that too, with my background, and I don't say that, but eventually somebody will comment back, you don't know a damn thing about the power grid. Because
right.
they don't know.
Yeah. You should turn that individual guy's power off right then.
No.
Like
if I was on the distribution system, yes. And that's the other. Well, okay. So first let's go back to
can the grid handle it? When every new car sold in California, but in 2035 is an electric vehicle, can the grid handle it?
I strongly believe it will be able to.
Are you heard it here,
If you just
folks?
want that,
yeah.
And I have to back that up. Like I said, I curtailed power on the grid in 2020. Sorry. And since then, from what I read, EV registrations are up 5-fold since that time.
Yeah.
So many more EVs.
And growing, yeah.
And our grid is greener. It's more reliable. And we have all these new EVs. So are EVs really a problem? Well, the data over the last 4 years says we're actually building the grid faster than we're transitioning to EVs.
Right.
And if we have another 10 years to do so at the scale we're going at, we'll be fine. From what I can tell. And the bigger, nobody ever posts an article too about ChatGPT released this new function. And people are commenting the grid can't handle ChatGPT.
Right. So this
which
is great. This
probably a larger concern.
We can go. Let's get into that because there's two.
Does AI use more energy than EVs?
I don't know. Right now, next to each other, the projections are huge, and it's using more. I don't know if anybody has a good grasp on how much power it could demand.
Right.
I do.
Okay. Okay. Please.
So, but before I get there, because wasn't there one prior to this, which was crypto?
Crypto was huge.
Crypto at its peak, and it's actually still there. It's kind of operating the servers. No one talks about it because Sam Bankman-Fried went to jail. But crypto, the creation of the running of the algorithm is hugely energy intensive. Did you have to deal with that at California again led a lot on crypto, the Bay Area in particular. Did you guys see any were you trying to manage for crypto mining?
Locational. As far as grid capacity, I don't know if it was that big of an issue. A lot of the times if we get to like a flex alert, they might go on their own power. These large data centers, they don't want to be curtailed. They don't want to shut off.
Okay.
So a lot of them have their own backup power.
And I know a lot of crypto people, miners, they were looking for really cheap energy sources. So they were going to Iceland, you have this geothermal energy that there's only 150,000 people in Reykjavik and you're producing enough for 1 million. Let's power crypto with that.
Washington State, we talked to some central Washington entities that have this federal power contracts that go back to the 70s, and their industrial rate is a 16th, maybe 12th of ours. So why put it here when you can go to Central Washington that still has good data connection? North Dakota has a great data system. I think it's the biggest per capita of capability, and their power is cheap too. So in locations where they were building really fast in areas that didn't have that kind of growth, it became a local issue, but not really a grid issue. And yeah, we have seen that it doesn't seem to be as big. But at the time, I was looking at it as the price of a Bitcoin should be in relation to energy. It is energy.
Right. Yeah,
that's its value.
It's stored energy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So on AI, let's go back to the AI question. I looked it up this morning, and this is was this ironic? I asked Google Gemini.
Oh, of course.
Of course I did. So I got the AI answer, And it says, what's the cost? How energy intensive is artificial intelligence? Image generation. Creating a single AI image can use 0.01 to 0.29 kilowatt hours of energy, which is similar to running a refrigerator for up to 30 minutes. So one single AI image. This is comparable to the energy used to mine cryptocurrency. Now, text queries, text generation. Generating text uses less energy than image generation, with 1,000 text generations using only about 16% of the energy needed to fully charge your smartphone. But if you think about the number of AI queries to make images,
once the Apple, the iPhone 16 and that new iOS comes out, every search will be AI.
Yeah.
And we don't know what all the applications will be yet.
Right.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people are going to start making movies with AI. You can already do songs in like 2 seconds.
Podcast is actually AI generated.
Yes.
It's not real.
Yeah, so.
And you were talking to RJ Scarron. The trucks have AI being built into them, or it's getting sent off somewhere as far as route planning, things like that.
Yep.
And I don't know if a lot of these are use cases we're even, comprehending of. We know cars. What other industries are using AI in a big way?
The ending statement of this search I did this morning was AI's energy consumption is expected to increase as models become more sophisticated and larger. Some estimate the AI sector could consume 85 to 134 terawatt hours of energy annually by 2027.
Is that a lot?
Is that a lot? Terawatt?
That is, yeah. It's kind of hard making that jump from a megawatt to real-time output, like horsepower,
Right.
but then say horsepower per hour, and then putting that over a calendar. But that's a massive amount.
Well, how much energy does California consume in a year? Just to give me some baseline.
Somebody might have to look that up. I don't know we're probably in some gigawatt hour
per
range.
year.
Yeah.
So AI would be 1,000 times that, maybe.
I think is the potential, but hopefully that's global. I
Still,
did recently see
that's a lot of energy.
in the total queues of people building new renewable projects was somewhere around 1.5 terawatts. And then I guess you'd have to look at how many hours are there in a year to come up with what they want to build for new renewables. And it's really only being held back by connecting to the grid, maybe some project funding, but also the transmission lines. We need more lines for these projects because if you're going to put something out in New Mexico that you want to feed into California, you get the largest single energy infrastructure project in U.S. history, which is currently going on. It's called SunZia, and the line is massive. That's the biggest part of it.
And you said that's going from Colorado to
New Mexico.
New Mexico to California.
Well, it's ending in Arizona, but the goal is then to use the existing system to move it through to California.
And what's so big about it? It doesn't sound that far to go from New Mexico to Arizona.
It's expensive. I think it's $6 billion or something
But
between producing.
It's just power lines, or what?
Power lines plus a big wind farm. It's I think
okay.
3,000 megawatt capacity on the line, 3,500 megawatt wind farm. So again, when you look at the scale of load, you're at 8% of California's load potentially being served by this wind that's in New Mexico. And another one's building in Wyoming at the same time.
Right.
Doing the same thing with wind and that geographical diversity of, we have sun, they have wind,
right.
We need to trade with each other.
So let me ask you this, because I was looking at the mix on the app of like the power in California. So it was like 21% natural gas, it was like 18%, 17% renewables, 2% coal, some percentage of nuclear. And so does nuke, like, does that? Do we need to think about that? Like I heard in Washington State, they're trying to do these like miniature reactors, like because nuke is green. There's no carbon dioxide produced. Like,
if I said no, everybody in the energy industry would send me hate mail because everybody loves nuclear energy.
Sure, yeah, it's great.
The problem it has right now is, say, Diablo Canyon, our currently running nuclear power plant. It produces one amount all the time.
Right.
It goes up to its top output and just stays there.
Sure.
So when power prices get very inexpensive or we're paying people to take energy, they're economic losers during that time.
Right.
When we're short on energy, then they're making, unless you could, a battery. And actually the really interesting ones out in Wyoming where they're using just salt as a heat battery.
Right.
So I think the unit puts out 500 megawatts, but if you don't want that much, you just heat salt.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want more, you just put more salt to water and you get more steam. And it has a range, I think, 300 to 800, something like that. So it's a dispatchable nuclear power plant with salt, which is cheap, easy,
That's awesome.
non-hazardous.
And then, but if you know what I'm talking about, like, I know Bill Gates is behind it, but they're trying to
one,
do,
yeah.
What's it called?
TerraPower, I believe.
TerraPower, right? And so they're trying to do these small regional, 99.9% recyclable the waste. You know, you're not going to have like the drums of nuclear waste scattered around. Like it's very efficient, modern. Is that coming? Is that happening?
Even the goal of it using old nuclear waste as part of the fuel,
yeah,
and then burning it down, they say like a cigarette.
yeah.
So what you have at the end is far less than what you started with. Super exciting. Hope it can work. I think that one's at 2032 to come online. And if it does work and they can meet the cost, everything that they're targeting, we should have these everywhere.
Because then we could like get rid of natural gas, which I know natural gas producers don't want to hear, but like that's a lot of CO2. You know, it's less than coal, but it's still a lot of CO2.
It's about 30% of what coal puts out. The plants are super efficient, 60% usually on a combined cycle.
But
so
it's still putting out CO2.
it still is putting out CO2.
And we need to stop that.
Do you know California's reduced natural gas use this year by 30% since last year?
Good.
That's massive for the utility industry to change that fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So again,
and
people,
is that continuing just because of the buildup of renewables? Like, will we
used
see
to have
this?
that ramp that where load goes up, sun goes down, and we filled it with gas, and now we're filling it with batteries.
Right.
In an incredibly short amount of time that we've developed this far, and I think that's where the grid can't handle renewables argument comes from. Is people have this idea we have a grid, and that's all we got,
Right.
and we can build more grid. If there's a location where we can't handle EVs due to a regional constraint, and you get down into neighborhoods and there's other issues there that's below our purview, but let's fix it.
Yeah, right.
So
That's been my attitude. Yeah,
so
We can do that.
Let's just do a quick recap and just provide some context. I want to go just a different direction slightly. You believe the grid can handle it. Jonny set up the question about 2035 and all EVs. We're talking about California. So that's great. And part of it is, yes, we got batteries and we're adding all sorts of, we have wind and solar, we're getting really efficient. We have a marketplace for this. So it's incentivizing itself to operate at its highest efficiency. We have people who listen around the world, those around the country for sure.
we have colleagues in Michigan.
What are they? Yeah,
we have no grid.
Now you started in Tulsa, and then off camera you were telling me you prior to you spent the last 6 years at CAISO. You were in Minnesota.
Minnesota, yeah, for Mid-Continent ISO.
How's the
Same
rest
idea.
of the country? They're screwed, right? The rest of the United States is totally up a creek because California is awesome.
You know what? NERC came out with a report, North American Energy Reliability Corporation,
Who reports to FERC?
Yes.
who reports to FERC.
See, learning.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they identify where they believe there's capacity issues.
Okay.
And the West was all clear. Which
Well, how far is
is
west? West?
west
Mississippi.
the western grid. So it really, if you draw the line, if you look at a map and you start seeing there's no more houses here, that's what happened. We built the grid out from the west and the east, and where each reached their
Maybe
extent
like Corona?
and stopped, we have a dividing line. So I used to live in Rapid City, South Dakota, worked for Black Hills Power out there. That
Is
was my
east
first.
or west?
They were west, but I
Okay.
lived on the east.
Okay.
My house was
you had
on
to
the
cross
eastern
an
grid,
enemy lines to get home.
Oh, okay.
is how close we were.
Right. Okay.
So that's part of the barrier, and it goes down through Nebraska, Kansas.
So it has nothing to do with the Mississippi River.
No,
Okay.
the Mississippi
Is a little bit more east of that.
Yeah, most of the Missouri would be on the eastern side.
Okay.
So you're saying, so in general, the grid nationally, except for Texas, we're good.
Okay, yes. And we talked about Texas a little bit. The operators that were on that day are on my free beer for life list. If I run into you and you worked that day in Texas, I'm buying the beer.
Really?
Why?
The grid should have failed.
Oh.
Their power grid had every reason to completely fail. And if that happens, they could have been out of power for days. Catastrophe. The deaths would have been 100 times.
Wow.
Without national, it would have been a massive response. What they did was incredible to save it. The largest load shed event ever in U.S. history.
What's a load shed event?
Load shed event is just curtailing customer use by directing it. We need thousands of megawatts off. More plants tripped, thousands of megawatts off. And we operate our grid based on frequency. It tells us how well our grid is doing. If we have too much power, frequency goes up. Not enough power, frequency goes down. and their frequency was terrible. And they did what they had to do, which is a scary thing to do. They dropped, I think, 33% of customers in Texas,
Right.
which wasn't good. Customers were out of power.
The frequency was like this, and they made it like that, kind of?
They brought it back up to 60, where we
Okay.
want to be, 60 hertz.
Okay.
That keeps your wall clock on time.
Okay.
If our grid's moving slow, your dial clock on the wall actually slows down. And we have to manage that and speed up the grid sometimes to correct your wall clock.
This affects schools.
Yeah, time error correction. It's weird.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they did save the grid. So
Wow.
I know we give Texas crap
Yeah.
for having the grid they have, but their operators were superhuman
Heroic,
that day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Good.
I love it. This is great. Because I like making fun of Texas.
I like Texans. I just have a problem with like some of the legislators in Texas.
Decisions that are made.
Yeah, Texans are great.
Okay.
They also have a ton of renewables, though.
Yeah.
Like they are.
No, yeah,
Well,
winds
right with
and solar.
California,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about renewables. This is great. Let's talk about renewables just for a second. So we're in agreement that wind farms cause cancer, right? And the noise they make drives people crazy, and it's a big tinfoil hat government
Interesting.
thing. No? Okay.
That you feel that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about solar fields and Joshua trees? Any issue there? Like we should be
Okay,
just,
so there
just
was-
mowing down more and more Joshua trees to put
I
solar
believe there
fields
was a
up?
project like that, and that is too bad because how many parking lots and rooftops and things do we have? We have so canals. Did you see that project where they're
Yes.
putting solar over canals so it stops evaporation?
over the aqueduct.
Brilliant.
Maintaining
Oh, brilliant.
California water,
Yeah.
Yeah.
huge concern.
That's brilliant because when I moved into my house, we have a fountain, and like I found myself like having to put water in it. And a friend of mine is an environmental engineer.
All
He's
the
like,
time.
the literal worst thing you can do for the environment is to have a fountain. He's like, you're just burning water. And I filled it in with dirt because I was like, I don't want to, deal with this.
Yeah,
So that's
awesome
brilliant.
idea.
Okay.
Love it.
What about you ever fly in LA and then, this looks like 50% of Los Angeles is just flat warehouses with white
Mhm.
roofs. What about like, hey, stick solar panels on those? Or is it, we don't even need that?
So we lease a building like that for my wife's business, but we're leasing it.
Right.
So we have no incentive
Right.
to put a solar panel
No,
on.
but I'm
the
saying the government
the
stepping
roof.
in and say, hey, if you have
Well,
a
how
big
about-
roof in LA,
They could
solar panel it.
incentivize the building owners.
Yeah.
In some way. Maybe they can force them, but at least incentivize them. Like a new house in California has to be built with solar.
Right. Thank God. Yeah.
Why not? I don't know why not commercial spaces because they have better roofs for it generally.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. And I was kidding. I was obviously kidding about wind farms causing cancer, but let's talk a little about solar. I'm gonna circle back to you on the internet getting into fights. You're part of a nonprofit, but still it's a government agency, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Solar,
we're trying to pull back from that a little bit just so we
Okay.
can get past the Caliphobia because
Yeah, there's so much of it. Yeah,
where we want to work more with Montana, Wyoming, New Mexico, and they have very real reasons why they wouldn't want to turn over any control of their power grid to an agency whose board of directors is appointed by Gavin Newsom.
Well, just because we're going to force them to get, gender reassignment surgery at a homeless camp doesn't mean it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not the concern.
Right. Oh, that's
but,
not the concern. Okay.
but it should be.
But I can also understand where they're coming from.
Right.
Sure.
I want to be more independent. We can work better
Yeah.
with you if we are more independent. So we are working towards that. It's another thing. If you're really geeking out, it's called the Pathways Initiative,
I've heard of that.
where we've already we've already agreed to turn over the oversight of the regional market, the broader market, to its own board of directors, basically.
Which would be
its
made
own
up from
oversight
people from a
committee.
lot of Western states.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
moving that out from under California ISO, and there's plans to further grow that independence just because we know this is good and it's going to be beneficial. So really we're taking something we built and saying, we need somebody else to really
Right.
manage this so that it's fair for everyone.
Got it.
So
Got it.
CAISO or CAISO started in '98, and this is still fairly young. And you were talking about how you've done so much growth and get people to understand how it works and why they should contribute or be a part of the system. It all sounds awesome, but as we're talking about solar, what do you tell the guy? And we have actually a good guy on our staff, Scott Evans, did it himself, put solar on his roof. It's a giant pain in the ass. Like, why is
It's expensive
Why
still,
is
yeah.
solar such a problem for just the average guy on the street, the average Joe? Is there?
I don't know. My house was built with solar. It was great. I actually, no, in our last house, I hired a company to put up a a patio cover in the backyard, and I had it built to put solar panels on because I bought the Rivian and I needed more energy to stay net neutral, and it was kind of flawless. But I think that might be part of the reason. An energy company knows the hoops, the barrels, the paperwork.
Yeah, because I mean, I've told this story 100 times. But when I have my panels put on, I signed the paperwork like around Thanksgiving. I said, when will it be on? They said, worst case scenario, last week of December, first week of January. In April, I'm on the phone saying, now I'm paying for solar and electricity because you guys keep failing inspection. And, you know, they're like, well, we have a program for that, you know, so the industry seems really bad.
Yeah, it's.
I've heard. I had a great experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've heard of stories like yours where people have a terrible experience, and I think it's a growing market.
I mean, I remember.
So a lot of people jump in and say we're experts.
Yes. And so I remember like when we failed the fourth inspection, and this time was they ran a conduit up the side of my house to the roof. And the law is it has to be 4 or 6 inches away from a corner, and they put it right on the corner. And I'm sitting there shouting at the guy, like, how do you not know this? And the guy literally turns around and looks at me and goes, we're a bad company. And I said, okay,
wow.
cool. That makes sense.
Well,
So I also have the benefit, my dad's a master electrician. So when these things come up,
you can call.
I'm also sending him photos. When we moved, I moved my Rivian charger and installed it on my wall and wired it on FaceTime. I know enough to hurt myself,
right.
but
great.
he knows enough for me to not get hurt. He's
Gotcha.
saying, okay, this is the order of steps you want to do and how to do it. And it went fine.
So is it in CAISO's interest that every Californian put solar on every square inch of their property and give energy back to the grid? Is that in CAISO's interest or not? Would it lower?
It's not something we're saying to do.
Okay.
If that's what the market wants, which is really the great thing about the way we're approaching it, is when you look back at, you talked about the Paris Accords, Clean Power Plan, things that we're not part of, but we're greening faster than those goals.
Right.
Because the market, not just on price of these resources, but the consumers want it too. So when those things line up, that's just a direction we're going. 95% of new projects that are in the queue to interconnect are renewable, leaving 5% that aren't, and zero is coal. I can't imagine anybody even trying to submit one.
It's one of those things, and you know, when you actually sit down and do the math, like, you know, to charge a Rivian at night in California, you know, it's $20 to $25, something like that, and to fill up a gas-powered big pickup truck is $100. Like you can't escape those numbers. You know what I mean? Like, so I think a lot of people, whatever they feel, eventually they talk to someone who says, you realize it's like 80% cheaper to drive this way.
Yeah,
You know,
and it also is helping the grid. Just what you said,
Sure.
that you are charging at night. Mine set to turn off. It won't charge from 3 p.m. to midnight because that's a rate decision. It's more expensive during those hours. So as long as we have the right rate structure around this and consumer knowledge, which I'd say mostly the EV owners,
They get it.
they're concerned about these things.
But is that, no, because my understanding was that, I'm DWP, I don't know what power company you are.
PG&E.
Okay, so my understanding was 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. is the cheap power. Is that DWP specific, or am I wrong?
You're a tiered rate plan?
I would look up
Yeah.
your rate plan because I have a specific rate plan because I have solar and an EV.
Yeah.
So the cheapest power is from midnight to 3 p.m. 3 to 4 it jumps up. 4 to 9 it's most expensive. 4 to 10 is a step down. It's actually a 3-tier.
Oh, so maybe I'm
Rate.
Can I ask what you're paying? Do you know?
I think it's 16 cents on the cheapest part.
Ours is 20. DWP, the cheapest is 20, I want to say. The cheapest.
But I think mine goes up to something like 40.
Yeah, I think I'm 36 at peak.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Although I just found something, I texted to my wife last night. I was like, look at this. Apparently, DWP, if you're an EV owner, they do some cockamamie thing where it's like 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour or something. It's like to try and get people onto EVs.
I love those programs.
Yeah.
I had one in Minnesota. It was a separate meter. And that meter,
it's a separate meter. Right. Exactly right.
It would only turn on during those hours.
Right.
So they could control that you were not charging.
No, screw
the
that.
other
If I want
hours.
to charge, I'll pay the money. But yeah.
So mine plugged into the wall.
Right.
So I just moved the plug over
Sure.
to the other outlet.
Right.
At the time, I had a C-Max.
Ford C-Max, baby.
Yeah.
That's what got me into. I related to the George Strait song "Don't Take the Girl."
I'll have to take your word for that. Go ahead.
Okay, That's a famous song. He
Not-
starts out saying, take anybody fishing but the girl. And that was my view towards EVs.
Right.
And I got the C-Max because it was a nearly free lease deal. It was so cheap because they were just trying to get rid of them.
Price of a cell phone, yeah.
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 And the interior was amazing.
Mhm.
It was super comfortable. They built an ugly car around a great interior.
It was a dorky looking car that actually drove okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Dynamics were fine.
Right.
And as soon as the engine
I'm
would
just
turn
gonna
on,
look this up. I'm just gonna look this up.
as soon as the engine would turn on in that car, I hated it.
Right.
It was so much better as an EV.
Right.
Oh, thank you. I've been making this point and people are screaming at me. Yes.
Yeah, the engine turned on. You're like, ugh, it's so harsh.
Yes,
and
it's like
terrible.
a Prius Prime.
Ugh.
When the engine turns on, it's like, go away, you horrible acting cycle.
And it's not like a
nonsense.
C-Max has the best engine. Like it's not a Porsche hybrid starting or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I find this? I can't find it. Anyways.
Okay. So when you're on the internet fighting with people, what is the biggest what's the biggest misconception you always run into and then you have to correct?
The biggest problem with that is the explanation of the grid can handle it is not a simple explanation.
Right.
It's many different things. It's that whole story of where we are with EVs compared to 4 years ago, that there's more, we're more reliable, we're outpacing EV demand with grid build out. We're doing fine. And we're doing it more renewably. Where the other side is, And it's that simple to them.
Right.
No, you're not.
And you're wrong.
Right.
Because somebody told me it can't work.
Yeah.
So
No,
you have to
I-
really get into it. And then at the end, you're like, I'm such a loser for typing this much on an internet post.
I do it all the time.
Look,
I said, what am I doing?
I get into this all the time with people, but a lot of people are like, oh, you're just coal powered car, and my thing is like, I actually read some studies about that, and like even if it's 100% coal powered, it's still less CO2 than burning gasoline.
That's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, I think it's 30,000 miles, coal breaks even.
Yep.
And we're not at worst case scenario. Nobody's at worst case scenario.
Right.
We're as close to best case scenario. If you are cognizant of reducing your CO2 impact, you don't need to be 100% green either. We're already so much better that it's a massive improvement. But if you just charge in California over solar hours, you're nowhere near that carbon intensity. You could be many hours totally renewable.
Okay.
Other hours, let's say you're 70% renewable, 30% gas. Gas is 30% of coal. What are we down to now? Now 9% of the worst case scenario. We're in a great spot and we're only getting better.
Right.
And my big plug on this is when we look at these big power outages we have, the major power disturbances always correlate with extreme weather. We have millions of people out in the Southwest right now because we have the hottest Atlantic sea surface temperatures I think ever recorded. And that's where we get our load from. That's why it's always these peak hot days, peak cold days. Most of our load is heating and air conditioning. It's not electric vehicles.
Right.
So this idea that we're going to forego the EV transition and continue producing more and more greenhouse gases is not a long-term solution to grid reliability. If we truly care about keeping the grid on, we have to decarbonize all industries. Or else we're going to keep having worse and worse storms, more extreme weather up and down.
Do you think that what happened? I mean, I was looking at some photos of what's going on in North Carolina, like, beyond heartbreaking, like just like towns gone. Like, do you think that's a tipping point, like politically, to get people to say, like, boy, like storms actually are getting worse. Like like the weather's getting worse, and if you listen to any climate scientist, look at any climate model, it's predictable that as the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere goes up, this is going to keep getting worse, and it's really killing people now. Like, do you think this could be a tipping point?
I don't know. You'd love to believe. So I'm more optimistic than most people, and I still have trouble because you see, Louisiana and Florida coastline going away, and what their voting tendencies are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
and you would think this might change it, but I'm not sure. There's got to be there should be a tipping point, and it should have happened already.
Because it's crazy. Like I was reading something the other day. Like we're losing. Was it 6 times? I'm gonna get the number wrong, but we're like way more glaciers are melting than we're losing rainforest. like 6 times the amount or something like that. Like it's and remember what a glacier is. It's snowfall over thousands of years, and so it's just thousands of years of water is just being released into the ocean
and changing the chemistry of the ocean,
right.
The temperatures, like I said, and sea surface temperatures drive hurricanes. And actually, when we get a hurricane on the east, that's typically when we have these heat events on the west during summer, because it keeps the heat kind of building as an oven over the western side of the United States. So we're feeling the same impact.
So we're about to enter October. I was looking like this weekend, October 5th and 6th, is 200-degree days in a row in LA, back to back in October, which
Weird,
is
huh?
bad.
Yeah.
That's,
and I was just doing a training on our forest fire monitoring, which is a huge thing too. Coming out west, I was like, okay, fires and transmission lines, whatever, this comes up, maybe never. And it's all the time.
Yeah,
and huge impacts. And that's part of the reason we do end up, I think in 22 with some flex alerts, is we lost a bunch of transmission lines to forest fires. So again, it wasn't a capacity issue. It was a
infrastructure
extreme weather causing more fires. What I found was you look back at around 1989, 1990, which would have been a really extreme fire year by the trend, like that's the year that spikes up, would correlate to a really good fire year now.
Right.
That was the low year in comparison. So our whole scale has changed, but at some point I'm worried people get accustomed to the change.
Fire season,
Yeah, it's the frog in the boiling water.
Right. It's fire
versus
season all year round.
heating up the pot.
Okay, speaking of boiling frogs, I want to ask you about this because I drove to Vegas over the weekend and back. That insane solar installation where they've got the mirrors that shoot the light up to the boiling thingy boppers and roast birds at 900 degrees. Are those good? Because like seems like there's a lot of land out in the desert to put installations like that. Like what is that called in there?
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
Direct solar voltaic, I think, was a interesting idea to direct. It's like the Eye of Sauron out there.
Right.
You have all these mirrors reflecting
computer-controlled mirrors that capture the sun and bounce it to
onto a ball of salt.
Yeah.
So it's a heat battery. So the good thing was, the idea was it was going to last after sunset.
Right.
Engineering, thought process, whatever. Let's try it out. Yeah, I don't think they call them streamers when a bird flies through the death ray.
Yeah, because it's like 900 degrees, right?
Yeah, and they
like...
just... And it's bugs and things too. So
good.
Yeah, they've been trying to find ways to mitigate that with things like noise, ultrasonic, reducing it. Another interesting one is wind turbines. There's this worry about bats. And it's not, they don't get hit by the blades.
Oh, it just
they
messes
just have
up
to
their
get
sonar.
near them, and the air pressure behind the blade is so low it like kills them.
Huh.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Those things, the tip of a wind turbine can be moving about 170 miles per hour. And it's crazy. The new ones are 4 megawatts about. When you convert that to horsepower,
that's like
6,000.
Yeah.
6,200.
Yeah, that's a lot of
6,200 horsepower out of like it's. I use that. I've done some things at schools where I show up and okay, here's a Corvette, here's a wind turbine. In pictures, which one makes more power? They're like, well, we know why you're here. It's got to be the wind turbine. It's like, but would you guess it's like 8 times?
Yeah.
The Corvette.
Or 3, Pininfarina Batistas.
Yeah. And they look so docile sitting up there. But yeah, so they are killing bats, and they've done so many new things. That's the thing. Anytime, these are all new problems. So we can solve them, but it takes a minute. They found painting 1 out of the 3 blades black reduces that by like 70%.
Really?
So we're it gives them a visual identification.
I mean, the latest thing I've heard about wind farms, the conspiracy is that they're not recyclable, or they're fiberglass, or you got to bury them, and
but they're fiberglass.
I don't know either.
Right, so it'll last forever.
It's sand.
Yeah.
It returns to sand.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a glass. It's just silica sand.
Right.
And would you rather have your house built on old coal bottom ash waste that's radioactive, mercury, or there's all sorts of, or on top of fiberglass?
Right.
I will gladly build my house on top of fiberglass fill, whatever. It's not harmful.
Right. Okay. Well, look, this has been awesome. I want to, you again, this was great. We connected on Instagram. You're like, I'd love to come and talk to you guys because I'm also huge fan of the show, huge car guy. So
Rivian owner. Let's not forget the
but
importance.
let's talk about that. You're very passionate about what you do. You also love cars. When you're arguing on Facebook or Instagram and you as you do, how do you talk? Look into the camera or speak into the mic And talk to that guy who still is.
Has a $450 Fox Body drag racer.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like, because I was gonna ask you, like, do you believe in climate change? It's very clear. Like you're talking about, this is you have an informed opinion, and you're in a profession that is actively working towards decarbonizing and towards the goal of reducing the impact of climate change. A lot of people out there listening are like, I don't care, man. I just want to drive my V8 Mustang for as long as I can. Like, why do I care? Why should I care about any of this? What do you tell them?
Well, I think that works well for me. That not only do I have Rivian R1T, but I also have a 57 Continental Mark II.
Nice.
Which was also super cool walking. I went to the Peterson yesterday since I'm in town.
Right.
And right outside was a Mark II and a Rivian.
58. Right?
57.
Is the one of the Peterson is a 58, isn't it?
They made them in 56 and 57. I'm not sure which that one is, but mine's the 57. They made 577 that year.
Yes.
Nice.
And you got the better carburetor, a little more compression. But that car has a super cool story. Anyway, I have that and a 64 Mercury convertible. I've had a bunch of old, mostly Fords. And I'm from North Dakota.
Right.
So when you're trying to relate to people, I think I throw them off that I'm not the person they expect to be as the California EV owner.
Right.
I also have this other side of hobbies and experience, and I love the Rivian. It's just a great car.
It's a good product, yeah.
And you get people who are skeptics, and you just put them in there and you raise and lower the suspension, floor it, 900 pound-feet of torque, hitting instantaneously.
Oh, you got the old one. The new one, is like 1,100.
I know, but the
or 1,200.
price.
I know, yeah, I know.
I do. I listened to this RJ Scaringe podcast, and he's selling it. He's doing a good job trying to make me want it, but
hey,
I can't.
They really are good, but yeah, I know. I'm still making payments.
It's fantastic. My wife, right before that, had a Range Rover Sport, maybe a 14, and just it's faster, functionally better. The interior, I think, is nicer.
The Range Rover people said to me, like, they got one and they said, like, we can't believe how, and I thought they were going to say how good it is off-road because it's Range Rover, and then literally the head of engineering for Range Rover goes, we can't believe how good the interior is. How did they make such a high-quality interior?
As their first product. Right.
Everything about it is just a vehicle. As an enthusiast, I had to get a truck kind of for my wife's business, tons of boxes and things like that to move around. And it was the only truck I wanted. If it hadn't been coming out, I would have resisted far more.
Right.
But since it was there, it was, and I actually put the deposit on the Cybertruck and the Rivian at the same time.
Same.
And I'm so glad.
Yeah, same.
I like the way that I did.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I told my wife, because she says, I hate this thing. I'm like, they're going to have to make it more mainstream. By the time it hits a market, it can't look exactly like that.
Nope.
And then they did.
Right.
And I was bewildered. The only one I've seen that I liked is somebody put two big googly eyes on the front of one.
Right.
And it just softened it in the perfect way.
I saw one
That guy has a
towing
sense of
yesterday.
humor.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I saw that video. Yeah,
Yeah.
big trailer. Well, they should be
Yeah.
able to.
No, you can tow 11,000 pounds. I just haven't seen it before.
Right, for a short distance, which is the other thing you run into. But
Yeah. Well, some people.
So the way to the heart of in your mind is just that you're a super relatable car guy that loves internal combustion, but you have this perspective on how the grid is actually. I think that's in my mind the summary of this episode. It's not perfect, but it's doing fine, and we have.
Well, it sounds like it's doing great.
We have a lot of upside still to come. Like we're still growing, and learning. And doing things like adding giant storage batteries. And we didn't get into where the batteries are from and all that whole mess, but we have other battery experts we're going to talk to.
Which is also getting better all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental takeaway that I have about all of this. Like the people who poop on EVs and all this, it's like, guys, you're comparing an industry that is in its infancy to 125 years of internal combustion in this country alone.
Yeah.
Like a mature market, we know all the answers to internal combustion. But all this stuff on EVs, including charging, including the grid, all this stuff is we're just starting to ramp up.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we've made this point a few times on this podcast, but like, yeah, right now, maybe, you're putting out CO2 when you're building EV batteries, but, they could be made with 100% green energy, and you could put 100% green energy into your electric vehicle. With gasoline, you just burn gasoline forever. It never changes. It can't improve.
And you also only burn it once.
Yeah.
You go through all this work of producing it,
of pulling it out of the ground
and refining it and all this, and it lasts for
blink of an eye.
A blink of an eye, and now it's in our atmosphere
forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Where that's the argument with batteries is yes, they take energy too, but you keep using it.
Mm-hmm.
And our grid is so much cleaner that you do have that breakover point. I work with, I from anywhere else I've worked, a couple places in the industry, California ISO, fantastic company of these super optimists, genius people. I know myself as a sharp guy. And to walk into a room of 10 people and be like, I'm the dumbest one here is a fantastic thing, from my perspective, because I can see what we can do.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
That makes me very optimistic because they're doing it. They're doing things that I was told were impossible.
Right.
And we now know we're only in the middle of that.
Right.
And it's going to keep, and it can't be just a power grid. It can't just be EVs. We got to decarbonize, top to bottom. So you make a good point with the batteries too. We can do it.
Right.
Talking to a great guy who's working on lithium sulfur and he's ready to go to commercial production. They have passed all their stuff and it's 100% recyclable. It's just a foil. You just pull it back out, put it in a new one. It doesn't degrade.
Yeah.
So once you mine it, it's there forever.
Yeah.
And more energy dense, cheaper, lighter, everything.
Let's
As you
go,
talk
baby.
about I want a more impractical EV too, as a car guy. They seem to start with the idea of let's make the most practical vehicle ever and then try to put some fun back into it. And if you started with like my Mark II is a very impractical vehicle, but an EV chassis should let you do that. But they could also make it like, give me a 2,800 pound fast EV. Yeah, it was like the McMurdy is like the only thing in that realm. But if the batteries get that light, why not?
Weight is the final frontier. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
well, great.
Yes.
This was fun.
Awesome. So thank you, Cody Smith of the CAISO RC West, for coming in. That was an awesome education about how the grid works and how we're pretty optimistic about its future.
Yes, and if you're out there saying the grid can't handle it, we appreciate your concern, and we're doing fine right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The InEVitable Vodcast, brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Ariya. Inspired by the future, designed for the now.